Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson, World Alternative Media here, and of course I'm joined by John Sneisen, economic analyst and author here at WAM. So, John, we are going to talk about Angola, where, history has proven that Angola seems to repeat the same mistakes over and over again, and of course it affects so many of its good people. And let's go into what's going on in Angola.
Yeah, well, what's going on right now is Angola is starting to hit higher inflation thresholds again. Like their current inflation is up at 29% something right now currently, and Angola has actually a huge record over the last decade since the 60s. Actually, every decade their currency has either failed or gotten revalued.
Okay.
So they're one of the worst countries in the world for devaluations and hyperinflations.
Yeah. So you've got some examples here, and can you just go over that?
Yeah, the example shows there. So we're going to go back to the days when it all started. They're actually old Republic of Portugal, and they got their freedom in the 70s from Portugal. Now, their first currency came out in the 8th of January 1977. It was called the Kwanza. Now that currency actually lasted for a while. It lasted for about 23 years.
Yeah.
So it was a currency that didn't really lose its value like a lot of hyperinflations and so on. Yeah. But what happened is it got replaced in the 90s because this is when wars and everything started to happen.
Yeah, sure.
And a new government, of course, comes in and they want their own currency to manipulate.
Yeah.
Because the old government manipulated the currency bad in the first place. Now, we're gonna look at so from the 90s to 95. That's when they really started to go bad when it comes to monetary policy. And what happened was they instated what's called the Novo Kwanza, and what happened with that one, it lasted for about 5 years, but then suddenly they replaced it with the Kwanza Registrado, which was then 1,000 units to 1, so they devalued it 100,000% was the devaluation.
Yeah, sure.
And then of course this Registrado actually failed quite quickly. It failed within 4 years, and then they implemented what's called Kwanza again, which they actually currently have. But this Kwanza also have been through, we're going to go into that, through some ups and downs. Now, when they instated that Kwanza for the Registrado, the exchange value was 1 million Kwanza Registrado for one new Kwanza unit. So that's 100 billion percent loss of value. Now, when we get into it, I'm going to talk quickly about their current notes, because I found it very interesting looking at these notes. And what I see is actually there's a lot of interesting things I could see from it. Of course, they've been devaluing their currency through debasement.
Yeah.
They debase their currency, less and less metals in the currencies. Because they used to have copper plated, then they started with brass and steel and so on.
And regardless of what it's based on, they're printing too much of it, obviously, and devaluing.
Yeah, so they have to devalue it. Now we're going to look at the currencies that they're actually are putting out currently, and in 2004, about 2004, that's when something happened in Angola again, and they went from having the values of 1, 5, 10, 50, and 100 Kwanza units in paper bills to then issuing 200, 500, 1,000, 2,000, and 5,000. So they just added again, some zeros to it. Now,
so it always works that way. Just keep adding zeros, print into oblivion.
And what happens there? We can look at. I'm looking at the exchange rates compared to the U.S. dollars now. The Novo Kwanza that we talked about, it started at 34,200 threshold in exchange to US dollar. Now, what happened? It ended up at 2.1 million. So just there's massive amounts of inflation. It's clearly, hyperinflation right there. And then, of course, they had the Kwanza Registrado. It started at 2,100 and went all the way to 5.4 million units. So again, it's massive amounts of hyperinflation that happened. And then, of course, from the 2000s to 2008, there was a lesser inflation, but it was quite high.
Yeah.
The inflation actually at that time was about 12,663% from 2000 to 2009. Now, the current exchange value, and I'm looking at like the old values here in 2008, it showed that it was 75.16 to a US dollar. Well, now it's 168, so we already have had since 2008, which is 8 years.
Yeah.
They've had over two. Let's see, now it would be close to 120-130% inflation.
Sure.
Just over that amount of years. And it looks like they're going to commit the same mistake again. Of course, Angola has been ridden by war and corrupt governments for a very long time. Yeah. Of course, that's also a problem.
It contributes, obviously. Civil wars contribute to the devaluation of a dollar.
Oh, 100%. A lot of hyperinflation ends up because of civil wars and so on. But of course, like this currency devaluations happens all the time because government and corrupt officials are in the play here, together with, you know, their bankster friends. Yeah. And the IMF is always involved. Like the IMF has borrowed money, and they're looking at borrowing money currently to Angola. It's just a bad thing. Like when they always use this paper currency system, I don't know how many times we need to report on these bad stupid behaviors by politicians run by greed.
I'll tell you how many times we have to report on it. Over 200 times. We have to do it on every single country in the world, because it's basically affecting every country in the world. And this paper money Ponzi scheme, it just continues and continues and continues, and it's like we're trying to spread information so that more people have an understanding of what's going on, so they can, you know, take certain steps to keep themselves and their families safe. That's our biggest goal, is to be messengers, and that's it. These are our opinions, but look it up for yourself. Don't base everything you have on what we're saying. Look into it yourself, and you'll see that we are correct. And what's going on is like just this over and over and over again, like repeating the same mistakes over and over again, expecting different results. And I mean, that to some is the definition of insanity. And what we need to do is get away from paper money, get away from devaluing, printing, central planning, and get back to a freer market where people dictate how their currency, their competing currencies for that matter, how much they're worth and how much demand there is in what they put their dollar into, instead of government trying to control everything and putting everyone into debt enslavement.
I'm sick and tired of you guys coming out there, these communists and socialists, saying, oh, capitalism has destroyed the world. Well, no, it's not. It actually is either crony, I would call them corporate fascists, or it's actually the socialists, very socialists themselves, together with communists, that are destroying.
Central planning, it monopolizes industry, monopolizes the markets.
You have an oligarchy all around the world. There's a little group of people that sits on the top and controls everyone, and everybody sits there and fight over, like the left or the right, which way to go. While these guys on the top just sits there and like almost laughs at us because we look stupid.
People talk about the elites, and that's why we need to stop capitalism. Well, I'll tell you something. Capitalists may exist, but capitalism as it stands doesn't exist in current day society. You can't have real capitalism with the amount of manipulation, the amount of monopolization by government. It just can't exist. So we need to understand that. Now, John, what is your message to those in Angola?
Well, our thoughts are definitely with you. I would say start to study what gold and silver has and effects on your currency. I would say also protect yourself with commodities that are very valuable to your people, like where you live locally. Because this is always like when hyperinflation happens, if you actually have the right value, the commodities that people need, that will become a currency in itself as you end up in hyperinflation. Probably again, and it looks like the Angolan government just are willing to do whatever it takes to be corrupt, steal your money, and force you to use it so they could profit for themselves.
Absolutely, and it's always about that the top of the structure, right? The top of the pyramid.
Follow the money, guys.
Yeah, and the more manipulation there is, the more pressure there is as the government stands on top with the central bankers, the central planners. They stand on top, and we the people have to hold that up and hold the floor up and hold the ceiling up, I should say. And the more and more you add to it, the heavier it gets, and eventually it's going to crush the people underneath. And the people of Angola are an example of that. They are going to be crushed underneath this again. This is why we just keep seeing so much poverty over there, among other reasons. Obviously, the colonization from Western countries doesn't help, but obviously when we keep seeing this happen over and over again, we have to analyze it and say, what did we do wrong? And should we do anything, or should we allow the markets and the people to decide things for themselves naturally by the hand of demand, and stop trying to control everything and be a control freak and end up putting everyone into a complete debt enslavement? We have to put an end to this. Paper money always reverts to its natural value of zero eventually, because that's always how it has worked. It's always how it will work. How many currencies have failed that are fiat now?
Well, there's not, like, it's hard to find a consistent number, but I would say 600 to 800 currencies.
Yeah, it just keeps happening over and over again, and we don't learn from it, and we say, well, maybe if we manipulate it slightly more this way, it might work out this time, and that's just not how it works.
Just they believe that they could, it's more than just that. I think it's just that they want to use it as a control mechanism instead of like making an understanding and trying to fix it.
Yeah, let's ask for freedom, not control. I think it's pretty simple. It's a very simple idea to get your head around once you study it. So thank you, John, for bringing this other report for us to give to the people of Angola, because we know people all around the world are watching what we're trying to tell them and what the information we're trying to give to them, and we hope that they heed the warning, because it's so important that you as individuals stay free. Thank you, John. This is Josh Sigurdson, John Sneisen, signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.